Hi everyone, welcome to our channel, Rebecca, Stu, and the Crew. I'm Rebecca and we have some really fun new holiday decor ideas for y'all. So let's go over our supplies today. We're going to use one of these little wood pieces from Dollar Tree. They're wood cutout signs, these little banners. There's a couple different packs you can purchase and a pack of the wood ornaments. We'll need some of the baker's twine and this glitter foam paper or any paper you have on hand. We'll also use the Crafter Square paint pens and some paint colors of your choice. We'll need some ribbon also, some paint brushes, hot glue, and some scissors. So let's get crafty. So the first craft we're going to do today, we're going to take some of that glitter paper or glitter foam and we're going to make a backing for our banner. I believe these little wood banners you get in a 3-pack. Some of them have the words in manuscript, some of them are in cursive. The only problem with some of the banners is like the letter A and things like that, you don't have that middle portion of the letter. So it could be a little bit hard to read, but I think it's easier if you put a backing behind these small little banners here. So we paint it black and then we take that foam that we've cut down to size and we're just going to put a few dots of glue around the backing and then glue that on. I didn't really pay attention that much to the dots that are cut through, just the wording. And here's what it looks like so far. Then taking our Crafter Square paint marker, we are going to just go around the edges with the white marker. And this really helps to bring out the details in the ribbon. And I make sure I go over those little dots to kind of make it look like a stitch line. So it looks hand sewn. And then I noticed it was still a little bit hard to read the lettering and I wanted those to pop up off the background a little bit. So I decided to go over just the edges with the paint marker. And what I did is I just very lightly, the tip of the marker is too large to fit down inside the hole, at least all the way for most of the letters. So I just lightly rub between the lines there and that helps get the paint marker right on the edges of the lettering, which helps it to stand out a little bit more. I felt like that made it easier to read. Now for the little ornament here, we're going to kind of coordinate colors here. We're going to paint this one black as well. And we're just going to do the whole thing. I'm using some chalk paint, so it's pretty thick. You're only going to need 1 coat if you use the chalk paint. If you do use acrylic paint, you might be able to see through it a little bit, depending on what color you use. So you may want to put 2 coats on. It's really up to you. So we'll let that dry. And then once it's dry, just trace around that same glitter paper that I used before. And we're going to put this as our backing to the ornament. Now, obviously I traced the outside edge, so you're going to want to cut in the inside just to make sure it's small enough to fit behind the ornament without any overlap. Once you get that cut down to size, just glue on the bottom portion and then fold that foam back and glue the top portion on. And you can trim up that foam once it's completely on to make sure there's no overhang. And then the same as we did with the lettering, we're going to take that paint pen and go over all of the little star shapes on the ornament to really help it to stand out a little bit off of the background. I think that's that small little detail of adding that little bit lighter color really helps to pull out the details in the ornament. So we'll just do the last 2 here. And then we'll set those aside to dry for a few minutes. Once it is, we can just go ahead and decide where we want our pieces to go on our palette wood board. This wood board actually comes in a 3-piece that is connected by twine. I removed that. I used one in a different project and we'll use 2 of them today. So you get 3 for $1.25 of those white wood pieces. So I just glued those 2 portions on and then taking some ribbon that coordinates and some of the baker's twine, I just took 2 small pieces of ribbon that I cut the ends and then I'm going to tie it off in the center with that baker's twine, just nice and tight, a regular knot. And this ribbon has wire in it so I can adjust the way that it looks on the sides once I get it all in place and cut down. And then we'll glue this to the top of the bow just for some added detail. And finally, we'll put a hanger on it, and that's it for this one. Very simple, easy, quick craft that you can do. The supplies for our second one, again, we're going to use that second palette board that we have. And then these 3D craft kits, we're going to use the Christmas trees from one of them. We'll need some ribbon of choice. I'm going to use this ribbon. Also a button if you so choose to use one. I'm going to use one for mine. We'll use some more of the baker's twine and the Crafter Square paint pen or marker. We'll need some paints. We're going to use some green and white chalk paint and acrylic paint. We'll need paint brushes, some scissors, and some hot glue. So let's get crafty. So this is another easy craft today. We're going to take just the Christmas trees from that 3D packet. They're meant to sit down in this little wood piece that holds it up like a stand. So we're going to take our scissors and cut those little tabs off the bottom so we don't see them. Then mixing some different colors of green paint together to get the right color for mine. Then go ahead and paint your trees. Like I said, I'm using 2 different colors of green paint just to kind of give it some highlights and lowlights and detail. It kind of all blends together a little bit at the end, so I don't really pay attention too much about dipping it in the paint. I just try to do some darker green and a little bit lighter green and just kind of alternate between the colors on the brush. And then once I have the trees painted, notice I leave the bottom portion open. That's so we can go in with some dark brown paint and add the tree trunk. And then for the bottom portion, you can use white paint or your paint marker. Once the green portion of the trees are dry, then I go over the edges of the tree and try to think of where the snow would fall and make those little lines. Obviously, you're just going to add, a little bit. You don't want to add too much, but we're adding the snow that has fallen onto the branches of the tree here and are kind of hanging off on the edges. So now that that's dry, we'll just glue our trees on using some hot glue. And then we'll take some of this buffalo plaid red and white ribbon from Dollar Tree. This is also the wired ribbon. This time we're going to take 4 pieces and create this X pattern. Take your baker's twine in the coordinating color and tie off the center to make your bow just like we did with the last bow. This one's just going to be a little bit more full because we added more pieces of ribbon. And then once the knot is done, go ahead and cut those end pieces off. And if you like, you can cut the corners of your ribbon to have that cute little notch cut out. If you just liked it the way it was, then go ahead and leave it. You don't have to cut the notches out, but it's really up to you. I like the way that it looks. And since I was using the bow as a main kind of focal point in the corner, I'm going to cut mine. So I just add some hot glue and put that in the corner, add a green button to the center to tie all the colors in together. And then we'll take the same red and white twine and add that to the back for a hanger. So again, another simple, easy craft. You can make this as a gift for someone. Just add some crafting to your house for the home decor. It's really up to you. So for our third DIY project, we're using these wooden stickers from Dollar Tree. We're going to use the chalkboard tags, and I have this little resin tag here I'm actually going to use as a stencil. And then we'll need some of the plain craft beads, some of the baker's twine, and we'll need something to write with, and a paint marker, some more ribbon of your choice, some scissors, and some hot glue. This is another easy craft, so let's get crafty. So I really didn't have the right size tags. So sometimes Dollar Tree will sell these chalkboard tags in the tag shape, not just the circle. They didn't have any, so I'm going to use this circular shape. And I thought I would just use this other ornament that I have as a template. So I just laid that and match up the hole at the top for the hanger and then trace around it with my pencil. It's a little bit longer than the tag itself, so I just pull it up to the top to create the flat bottom. And using those pencil marks that we just created, we'll just cut the edges off with some scissors. And I did this to 3 different chalkboard tags because we're going to make 3 different ornaments today. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to make this little X pattern with our ribbon and then tie it right in the middle with your baker's twine. And that will create a very simple bow where both of the tassels hang straight down, kind of over to the side a little bit. But you don't have to try to fuss with it with one of those little ribbon pieces at the bottom, kind of over the side, not going where you want it to go if you kind of tie it in this form here. So we're going to notch the bottom. So we made one that had a green ribbon, one that had the red and white ribbon. We matched the baker's twine to that one. And then we are going to also do a black and white one. So for the red and white one here, what we're going to do is take that baker's twine and go through that little eyelet at the top to create the hanger. And you want your baker's twine to be a little bit long because we're going to add some beads to the tie at the top. Now, if you can't get your ribbon at the end to stay together, just a little tip, use a small piece of masking tape and tape up the ends a little bit there to hold all those little strands together. And then you'll be able to use the ends of that ribbon to thread your beads. It just makes it so much simpler. So we're going to take those craft beads and we're just going to add 3 of them to the tag. Now, when you get to the third one, you're going to take that twine and go back up through the bottom to create this loop, and that helps hold all of the beads in place and they won't slide up and down the baker's twine. So now taking that bow that we already made, we left a tassel kind of long that we tied it with. That was intentional. So we'll flip it over and then we can use it to tie this to that hanger that we just made. We'll create a double knot and then go ahead and cut off your excess. If you want, you can put a small dot of hot glue on the back of that to make sure it doesn't come untied. And then you'll tie off your hanger at the top, creating a loop so you can put it on the tree. And then we'll just cut off the excess. So we'll do the same thing to the black and white one that we have here. And then taking your paint marker, you can put some little dots on the black background to create snow. And then take your wood sticker. I removed that little foam sticky tab off the back and I attach it to the tag using some hot glue. And then our red and white tag and the green and white. And then we'll add some little dots to the background of these. I found that the dots looked a little bit nicer if you put the snowflake on first and then go around it to help space your snowflakes. It just kind of looks a little bit better. So I recommend gluing it on first. And like I said in the beginning when I showed you guys the supplies, there was a whole bunch of different stickers Dollar Tree sells, those wood stickers. You can use any one of those to put on the tag, or you could just use the tags as someone's name or write peace or joy on them and use them as these really cute, simple ornaments for your tree or gift tags for your gifts this year. The supplies for craft number 4, we're going to use some of this antiquing wax and some different paint colors. We'll need some paint. We're also going to use a wet wipe or a wet paper towel. We'll need some more of the wooden beads, another one of these wooden ornaments, and then these wire ties or a piece of pine from a tree piece. We'll need the ribbon and twine, some scissors, also some hot glue. I'm going to use one ornament hook as well. So let's get crafty making our 4th project here. So we're taking one of these small wood pallet pieces from the Dollar Tree. It's one of the smaller signs that have the twine hanger at the top. We're going to put some antiquing wax on the wood and then go over it really quickly with a wet wipe to help smear it into the wood and remove any excess. Now, I would have at least 1 or 2 wipes on hand. So once you put that antiquing wax on, you can take another paper towel or wipe to wipe off the excess, and that's going to help it get into the wood better and dry a little bit quicker. Doesn't take real long, but it takes a few minutes. So while that is finishing up drying, we're going to take this little ornament here, and this one we're going to paint bright Christmas red. You can really do any color you like. I'm going kind of for a theme here, so we're going to use this bright red color, and then we're going to cover those little spaces in the back to help them kind of stand up off of the background. We just need to paint the one side. You can paint the back as well if you like. You can see half of it from the back when we put all of this together, so it's really up to you. Now taking a pencil, we're just going to draw in some ideas of where some branches would go coming out from the side of the signs. I just want to pencil these in a little bit so I kind of have an idea when I start painting where I'm going to go. I don't want to completely freehand this, even though they're just very simple, crude, like twigs from a tree. Wanted it to have a little bit of an idea, before I went in with the paint. I don't want to just go in all willy-nilly and add my details here. So I'm kind of thinking it's better to pencil it in. I'm just going to cover it up with the paint anyways, and you're not going to see it once I'm done. So I do the ends a little bit thicker on the edge, and then I, of course, make the branches a little bit thinner as they go out to the ends there. I'm just using a really dark brown paint. I believe it's called Melted Chocolate, and it's an Apple Barrel brand, but of course you can use the Dollar Tree acrylic paints. And this is just acrylic paint. It is not a chalk paint. So of course we're using a really small detail brush to make the branches. It doesn't have to be too small since we do want some of them, of the branches to be a little bit thicker, kind of towards the edges. And you don't want to do too many of these because we have to add some green to each one of these little branches here. We don't want to overwhelm the background. So once we have all of the brown background branches in, we want to add some highlights, and then we're going to want to add some fake snow as well. So now I'm taking just a very small amount of white paint and mixing it in with a tiny little bit of brown paint. I basically have a dry brush here and just adding a little bit of highlight to the branches so it looks more like bark. And then you could use either some white paint or your chalk marker. It's not chalk marker, I'm sorry, it's a paint marker. And you can add some snow to the top of your branches. So I show you both ways here. I start adding the snow with the paint marker, which wasn't too hard to do. As you can see here, it's quite easy. And then I use just a small detail brush to show you guys it's just a simple. Of course, you don't want to load up too much paint on your brush. You want to add just a little bit at a time. And just really think about where the snow would land if it was snowing. So now we're going to take this tiny little pine needle piece here. We're going to practice on some papers. What we're going to do is we're going to take the edges of those needles, dip it in some green paint, and then just create like this little brushes, kind of drag marks with the paint to create what a pine needle would look like on the tree. Just kind of gives it the right amount of texture and detail. That's okay if it gets a little heavy in the center. You can use the bristles to kind of drag the paint out towards the edges. And you're basically creating kind of like a triangle shape. So now that we have kind of figured out how we're going to work this, then we'll cut off a few of those small pine needles. I tape them together on the end with some masking tape just to make it a little bit easier to hold on to. Then I dip in the paint and I just drag that paint down, pretty much using this as a very simple rustic kind of paintbrush. And as you can see, it makes those little lines that represent a pine needle on the end of a tree. That's pretty much the look we're going here, and this was the best way I could come up with to paint those really fine lines and kind of give it that same light, airy texture, because you could always see through those pine needles. They're not always that thick. They're always a little bit more thicker towards the center where it connects to the branch, but then it gets kind of thin and you can see through it on the edges of those pine needles. So I really want to portray that as I paint these. And as you can see, I add a little bit of green to each one of those twigs there. And then you don't want the details to get lost. So we're going to add a little bit of highlight to the pine needles as well. So we'll cut off just like 4 pieces of those pine needles. And we'll fan them out. And then we'll dip those in the white paint. And add really small little lines to the green that we just put on the background. And add just a tiny little bit of snow that has fallen onto the pine needles. And just take your time. Don't rush. You really want to take your time. Make sure that green paint also underneath is dry all the way before you start adding the white, or it'll just blend together and make a light green color, which you don't want. You really want it to look like snow. And I add just a tiny little bit. I just keep going over it until I figure out that I've got enough snow. You see I did it not too heavy, kind of light. And now we're going to take this really pretty ribbon. I found this at Hobby Lobby for like 50% off, so it was like $4. And you get quite a bit. I like the brown that was with it. Kind of gave it an aged look. And I'm just going to cut the wire off of it. So what I wanted to do is fill in the back of the ornament with some hot glue and then this ribbon so that I could have that really pretty rustic kind of looking vintage ribbon as kind of like the details for the ornament. And then again, we want to help those shapes pop up off the background and the top of our ornament. We don't want it to just be red, so we're going to use the Crafter Square paint marker in the color gold. And we're going to go over the topper and then around the edges of those little starburst pieces to help them to pop off the background there. Now, Dollar Tree doesn't always have these paint markers, but when they do, it's usually around this time of year, and you're probably going to find them in the craft aisle and the school supply office aisle, where that's where I find them at, and they have them on those white strips that hang on the shelves, so keep your eye out for them. They're easy to miss. So now we're going to use some hot glue and add the ornament to the bottom. Notice I have it hanging off of the bottom a little bit. I wanted to make this a little bit longer and I didn't want to cover up that really pretty pine needle. Then I'm going to take one of these ornament hooks and slide it through the hole. I probably should have did this part first, but it wasn't glued down there, so I was able to get it through. And then just pinch it so it doesn't fall out. And then I add a tiny little dot of hot glue and add the end of the hook right where I want it on that branch, so it looks like it's hanging from the branch. And we'll take some more of that rustic ribbon, and this time we're just going to cut the notches in it, leave it the size that it is, and then we'll just kind of bunch it up in the center and put two pieces together, and we'll tie it off with some twine. And since this has the wire in it, once you have it tied off, you can adjust those little pieces and open them up how you like. We're going to take that garland wire tie I showed in the beginning of the supplies. We're just going to cut the end off and add a little tiny piece so it kind of looks like it's wrapping around the front of the ornament from the tree. And then we'll take the bow and we'll add that to the top with some hot glue. I was going to put it on the ornament originally, but then it covered the top of it. It just looked weird. And then we'll take the hanger that came on the board. We're just going to use that one over again. And we'll go ahead and string on these natural color beads. It takes quite a few to actually fill in the hanger. I was surprised how many it took. So it's a small piece of twine. And then we'll go ahead and just reattach the hanger. Just push it through the holes and then hide those little tabs underneath of the bow. And there you have it. Here's the topper with the bow, and then the pine needles with the branches, and our ornament. All right, so DIY 4 and 5 have the same supplies. We're going to need a Sharpie, a pencil, a charcoal pencil, or a pen, and then you'll need something like a craft stick to rub with. We're going to use the large wood signs that they sell, some glitter stickers, and then we'll need some ribbon. We're also going to use the Crafter Square paint pens and some paint and paint brushes. Some scissors. We'll need some hot glue, a piece of paper or a few pieces of paper, and some tape to create our template. And then these are the pictures that I drew. We're going to make this double-sided, and I will have a Google Docs that you guys can open and print out so you can kind of trace those if you like. So I'm going to draw the pictures here, and obviously the sign's pretty long, so I need paper that will cover it. So I'm just going to tape the two pieces together, and then I just wrap it around the piece of wood. I add some tape to hold it in place while I sketch out the drawings. So I want to make sure that I mark the edges here because the paper is a little bit longer now that I put the two pieces together. And I'm just going to start sketching out our picture. So the first one, we're going to do a snowman. We have his little hat here. I'm going to add holly with some berries. And then we'll do his head. So at first I thought that looked good. It was a little too small. I wanted to take it down a little bit further. This is why we draw it out first. It kind of helps so we don't mess up the whole thing. We're going to draw a scarf. And then we've got the cheeks, the carrot nose, and his mouth. And then the eyes, which I ended up changing the eyes once I actually drew it. I didn't like the way they looked when I first put them on. The scarf, we're just going to draw some little lines here. And have the piece of the scarf hanging down to the side and some buttons. For the hat at the top, I ended up making a little bit taller. And then I add some snowflakes. And now what I'm doing is I flipped it over and I'm going over the whole thing. I traced it with a Sharpie so you guys could see it when I flipped it over. And then I trace over it with the charcoal pencil. You can get these charcoal pencils from the Dollar Tree. I highly recommend using the charcoal pencil. It's going to make this process a lot easier. And all I'm doing is tracing over that drawing that I just made. And like I said, I'm going to make a Google Doc so you guys can go ahead and print it out, whatever size you like, and then go ahead and use the one that I drew as your template. But we just want to add as much detail as we can. We don't have to go too crazy. We can always change it when we paint it in. But if you really need like all the detail, then I would trace as much as possible. And you can add your own embellishments to this to kind of give it a 3D look, which I do end up doing for the buttons and the snowflakes. Initially, I was just going to paint those on. Then I found these snowflake stickers that I had, and I decided to use those too. So then you want to tape it down to your board with the graphite touching the board. And then take a craft stick. I started using a pen at first and that was taking forever. So use like a craft stick or a popsicle stick and just rub over top of everywhere where you have a mark that you would have drawn. And what you're doing is you're transferring that graphite pencil onto the board. And once you're sure that you have it all done, then go ahead and take that paper off. And you've got your picture behind that you can now paint. And now you can trick everybody and think that you freehand painted the whole thing, but you had it drawn on there to begin with. So now let's make another fun picture. This one's for the back, and let's make it a little bit different. We're going to make a reindeer. So we're just doing like half a circle or an oval for the top of his head, and then half of a circle for the bottom like portion of his face. And then a large open triangle shape for his nose. We'll do some eyes, which are just ovals that are flat on the bottom. Just think of them as shapes, not a face. That kind of makes it easier. We'll draw the mouth, and then that's going to be his ear. And then the antlers, let's just make them like a heart shape. Everybody can draw a heart. It's okay if you don't get the whole antler. Obviously, he's peeking over at the side there. We'll draw his neck and then his chest portion. Again, that was a little too small, so I wanted to make it a little bit larger. And let's add some bells like he's wearing a collar. And then we'll draw his fur down here at the bottom. We'll add a little bit of detail for the eyes and a little tuft of hair at the top. And then we'll add our snowflakes. And then you're basically going to do the same thing. You want to trace over it with your graphite pencil and then put this on the back of this board so it's double-sided and you can change it throughout the season. So now we're just going to paint this in. I know you're thinking, well, how am I going to see all the details once I'm going over it with the paint? And to tell you the truth, you want to just kind of go in lightly with the paint. If you need to, just make the pencil marks darker so you can see it through the paint. And then when you add your detail lines, you're going to paint over it anyways, and then you won't see it. So don't worry about being maybe a little bit lighter with the paint when you're going over the lines so that you're able to see them when you want to add your details. So what we're doing right now is just painting the background. I believe this is called linen. It's kind of like a light gray color. It's really pretty. It is a chalk paint, but it's going on. As you can see, I do it thin enough that I can still see those pencil marks through the paint. And then we're going to do the hat black. Obviously, the black paint is going to cover up any major detail, which I wasn't too worried about since we just had a snowflake. And obviously these colors that I'm using are just suggestions. You can, of course, paint these to match your own home decor and what colors you like to decorate with. Now for his nose, obviously we're going to do the orange. And you can see I really didn't add a lot of pencil marks. After I rubbed the graphite pencil on there, I did darken up the eyes a little bit. But most of it, I just left it as is. Some of it I darkened because I wanted you guys to be able to see it. Now this portion of his hat, at first I used this light brown color and I didn't like it all that much. So I ended up adding gold to it. And then we'll go over his whole face and body with the white paint. I could still see the wood grain through the white paint, and it was just acrylic paint. So I ended up doing 2 coats of the white paint by the time I was done. I didn't want to see the wood grain as much as I was seeing it. And then we'll add the stripes to the scarf here. If you notice the scarf, like on the edges, I kind of rounded them so it looked more like it was a real scarf and didn't look so flat. We'll fill in the paint for the holly. I add some dark and light green to kind of give some highlights. And we'll add a little bit of highlight to the red for the berries. I didn't even wait for them to dry, just kind of added in a little bit lighter color paint. And now we can start adding in some detail around the pumpkin. You can use your paint markers here if you have them. Sometimes that's easier to do the detail work if you use the paint markers, especially if you wait for the paint underneath to dry. Then you're basically just coloring it in. And I'm going to add some snow to the top of his hat. I just kind of thought of that the last minute. I thought that would be cute to look like snow had fallen on top of his hat. And then the cheeks, we're going to do a really light ballerina pink. We're basically using almost a completely dry brush for this portion. And if you cover up any of the black paint, you can just go ahead back over it for that part of the mouth. And then the eyes, I told you I changed them up from the original drawing a little bit. We'll add some little white dots to the middle of his eyes. I added some snow on the top of his nose also. I glued the buttons on and then start adding the snowflake stickers. They weren't that sticky and I didn't want them to fall off. So I add some hot glue to help hold them on. And if any of the snowflakes kind of hang over on the edge, that's perfect. That's okay. Then just trim them off. I did that for a few of them. I basically just cut the snowflake in half and put it right on the edge of the picture. So then I took the end of my paintbrush and I add some snowflakes all over the picture. You can use your paint marker here if you're more comfortable with it. I'm just using the end of a paintbrush. And so there is our snowman. And we'll add some more ribbon and detail to this once we're all done and we add the hanger to the top. But here's what it looks like with all the detail. I have a little bit of snow on the holly, the end of his hat, and his nose. And then we'll paint our reindeer. So for him, he's a lot of different colors of brown. So we're doing a I think it was called Taupe. It was the Apple Barrel brand for his face, or the bottom part of his face. And then we're going to go in with that same color and do the bottom of his ear. And then with the dark brown, we're going to do his neck and the hair down at the bottom. Again, don't be worried if you're going to cover up any of the detail of like the snowflakes. So once I do the brown paint at the bottom, the dark brown, I went in with the lighter brown and just kind of made these little streak marks so it looked more like fur. I used that same dark brown to do his ear and the little tuft of hair up on the top of his head. And then for the top portion of his head, we're going to do a little bit darker than where the nose is at, but obviously lighter than his body down at the bottom, and that little tuft of hair and the dark brown ear. Just to kind of give it a bunch of different color variation and detail. It helps separate the different pieces of him as well. Just kind of helps different parts to stand out a little bit better by using a bunch of different colors of the brown paint. So now for his collar, I decided to use kind of like a Christmas green color. And then we'll do his nose in red, obviously. Kind of give him a Rudolph vibe. I do the really bright Christmas red first, and then I go in with a darker red on the edges just to kind of give it a shadow. And then I trace around him with the black paint kind of on the edges, and then I paint the whole background black. Obviously, we did the black background because it's a dark night and we want his nose to shine. We'll add the detail for his mouth, the hair around his nose and ear. Again, your paint marker here might be a little bit easier to add those details if you don't feel as comfortable using your detail brush. We'll add a little bit of lighter brown paint to help add details to the hair. We went around the antlers, and now we'll work on the eyes. Trim around the nose. And again, I added a little bit of dark red on the edge of his nose to kind of give it less of a flat look there. The bells I painted gold, and then we do a black line straight across the center, 4 dots, and then at the end of the dots, you just connect them in like a V shape to make that bell. And now that he's all painted in, we can go ahead and add the snowflakes. So at first I painted these in and they looked okay until I found the stickers, and I really wanted to use those glitter stickers that I had. So once I added all of the snow all around him, I added a few to where he was at. I don't want to cover him up too much with snowflakes, but I did a few. But I went ahead and added the snowflakes right on top of the big ones. And I kind of like the 3D look to it. We've got the painted one in the background and then the glitter sticker on top. And we added a white ribbon at the top. And then for the snowman side, we made a bow with a gold snowflake at the top. And that's all of our things that we made today. Lots of painting, but it was so much fun to make all these different wall decor pieces. There's so many things you can use at Dollar Tree to make this wonderful wall art and little ornaments. I highly recommend checking out their crafting supplies. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed what we made today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And here are some other videos from our channel you may also enjoy. And don't forget the picture for the reindeer and snowman are in the Google Docs in the description box below. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.